All right. A very good afternoon to Ren Kai over here, a very long time friend of mine in the water polo scene. Uh, to all our viewers and friends out down there, today's topic is very, very interesting because we're talking about how esports is relevant and how it has contributed to our sports industry of late, and whether or not when we compare them to sports, the traditional sports that we know of, right, how they stack up when we talk about the current circuit breaker period itself. So, Ren Kai himself has been very, very involved in the sports scene for a number of years. More so since young, right? I still remember the first time I met him. It was in the Serangoon Gardens Country Club when we were doing swimming competitively at that time. And at a young age, he was totally just blasting everybody out of the pool. Yeah. And currently, right now, Ren Kai is the co-founder and managing director of Reddentes Sports Private Limited. So maybe Ren Kai, you'd like to share a little bit more about what you do over there, so as to let the viewers understand more about yourself also.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me on the show. Really, I think we've been friends for over 20 years, 20 to 30 years already. So it's been a long time, but very happy to see how you have developed as well. So from my end, I think for Reddentes Sports, we set this company up 2 years ago. Actually, my co-founder, his name is Mark Chiu as well. So small world.
That's right.
But, so for us, we focus a lot on our bread and butter is still on media rights trading. So, for example, your championship football, which we sold to StarHub and Singtel, we do badminton as well. So a lot of it is a lot on media rights selling to distributing to broadcasters around Asia. Recently, we also signed up one athlete, a badminton athlete from Thailand. So she is trying to qualify for the Olympics, and that's where we are helping her to bring in more sponsors, bring in more partners in order to fund her way towards the Olympics. About 1.5 years ago, we were introduced to esports via this team called Team Flash, which we subsequently actually invested in them. Because we saw the emergence of esports in this industry. I mean, if we talk about it, I don't think the sports and esports industry are too dissimilar. A lot of things actually transcend across, right? Whether it's your athletes, your pro athletes, or having events, selling the rights as well, doing partnerships. I think they're a little bit similar. I think you can transfer skills across. That's why we were looking at esports, and at the same time we also figured out that I think esports has the ability to grow a lot faster than what sports has, because sports has been around for the past centuries, right? Esports just emerged probably around 10 years ago, and that's where they started having a lot of pro teams coming up. So we find that esports has had the benefit of the advancement of sport to learn from, to study from, and we feel that esports is definitely something that will not take over, but will be complementary towards sports in the future. And so therefore we felt that we needed to go into this industry as soon as possible. So we invested in Team Flash, and from there we also started partnerships with developers. Because as we know, I think esports games, all of them start off from the developer side before they come down, and then people start playing, and then you have distributors. So we wanted to go all the way to the top of the food chain. So we started partnering with developers. So developers like Riot Games, where we actually help them to distribute the series, which is called the Pacific Championship Series. It's a League of Legends.
League of Legends.
And yep, that's right. And we help them to distribute across Asia. So this has been quite a fruitful partnership, and we are learning from them as much as they are learning from us as well. So that's awesome. Basically the lowdown of the business there.
Wow, okay. So in today's session, right, what we're going to do really is to look into how these three criteria in which we are going to talk about, which is why esports is so uniquely positioned to survive actually post COVID-19. The second thing we want to talk about is whether or not the pro athletes or even athletes per se should leverage on esports currently. And are there any financial game rules for the athletes from both industries to look into so that they can do better, in times to come? So without further ado, let's just dive deep straight towards the first question down here to Ren Kai, right? Why is esports so uniquely positioned to survive post COVID-19? What are
I
the
think
positive impacts so far? Yeah, that you have seen.
the beauty of esports is that it has been impacted by COVID-19. I think everything has.
Mm,
But from the esports perspective, they have been able to continue on their online tournaments. So
mm-hmm,
again, we take the Pacific Championship Series as an example, the PCS. So they were able to complete their whole series without disruption by COVID because each of the teams were playing at their game houses. So what they needed to do was just to log onto the server, and then as long as both teams are already on the server, there was enough internet bandwidth, the competition could go on. So they were not really disrupted by during the regular season. So of course, all of these series usually end off with an offline tournament. An offline tournament means that everyone congregates in one arena, one stadium, and then the teams will all be there together. So
yeah.
unfortunately, because of COVID, they were not able to do that. But
Okay.
still, they were able to complete the regular season, and this really brought a lot of entertainment, a lot of content to everyone staying at
Mm,
home. Right. So within this COVID-19 period, actually, esports receive record numbers of viewership.
mm,
Right. I think we all know that all your football leagues, all your badminton series, and everything has stopped because of COVID, right?
yeah.
But because the only type of live content that was on available was esports, so naturally a lot of people who have been hungry for live sport tune into esports, and that has really helped the esports industry during this period.
Wow, wow. I think, in fact, you when you mentioned that they started off or they are still continuing their games back in their own homes, that's just like how they used to start up anyway, correct? Before they decided to have them all gathered in a big arena like what we saw, and it's just like going back to their grassroots, the roots as to how the whole industry started. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. I think with esports as well, because esports really targets the youth all the way
Mm,
to early adulthood. So with esports and a lot of participation, not only viewing but also participation, I think a lot of youth, right, are staying at home, are being engaged at home. And this helps a lot of governments because they're trying to get people to stay at home. So
mm.
with esports, so they manage to really engage these youth and to get them to stay out of trouble during this period.
That's very true. That's very true. So, what other factors are there in which you feel that because of the qualities of esports that they can continue to survive past this period of time?
I think the key thing is esports is it's quite similar to sport in a sense that it's about competition, right?
Competition.
Whenever there's
Okay.
competition, there is always a winner, there is always a
Yeah.
loser, which means that there is always a storyline. And
Mm-hmm.
people love storylines, right? The plots,
Mm.
the David versus Goliath, the underdogs versus the favorites. And esports is able to provide all these storylines. And therefore, I
Mm.
feel that even post COVID,
Mm.
esports will still be going towards will be going faster towards mainstream, right? A
Mm.
lot of people think that, oh yes, once COVID finishes, sports comes back in the forefront, esports will start
Mm.
losing out. But I believe that they can be complementary, right? Right
Mm.
now, a lot of people who haven't watched esports manage to catch some esports during this COVID period, and
Mm.
hopefully there will be some converts. Some people start watching esports which they didn't before COVID, and
Yeah.
from there they would gain that interest because really, if we look at it, the support for esports teams are really very strong. If we look
Mm.
at Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, these three would be the biggest markets in Southeast Asia. And if you look,
Ah,
if
okay.
you go to a tournament, the easiest way to better understand the beauty of esports is to go to a tournament once COVID's over. And from there you can really see the support, the fans that are there to really root for the team. And from there you can see the what the values that esports would bring in, right, to
So the
the
entire
bigger
the possibility of galvanizing the country, the economy, basically people's spirits is still very strong because of this factor, right?
yes, definitely.
Okay, okay, that's quite amazing to hear because most of the time you will just be thinking that it is just between the person and the gamer over there, but in the ability to able to galvanize the economy itself, indeed, it's something that I think we all should look towards too, especially when everybody is trying to pick themselves up from a potentially morale wrecking situation that we have right now, and in fact in the next 2 to 3 months, that's where a lot of economies or industries are feeling burnt and perhaps even worn out over the fact that they have low or no revenue. And it is good that there's some form of a beacon of light that can come from this industry. And I'm glad that you are part of this together with a team as well. Yeah. So let's talk about now in terms of how athletes, who have been training so hard in the water, on land, and how even prior to it being circuit breaker, they are no longer available to train out there. So what is some of the things they can do right now and they can leverage on esports currently?
I think with like what we mentioned just now, esports has brings together a lot of values as well. Whether it's excellence, friendship, respect, perseverance, determination, trying to compete with the best. I think all these are already encompassed inside esports, right? So for athletes, yes, you do not get that physical activity, but in
Mm,
terms of training your mind, training to keep your mind active, that's
yep.
definitely something that you can get through esports, right? And some sports has actually gone one step further. So, for example, like cycling, right? They
Yep.
have got this software called Zwift, where basically you have a computer screen in front of you, you have a
Mm.
stationary bicycle, you have a software, and basically you're able to go to try out virtual Tour de France, right? So you can choose
Ah.
routes around the world, and basically your bicycle, your stationary bicycle, will track. For example, if you're going uphill, then it would have more resistance to mimic that uphill cycle, right? So these are ways
Oh.
where sports are trying to advance, to improve, and to go into the esports space, so that touch wood, if this kind of situation happens in the future again,
Yeah.
at least everyone is better prepared, right? So for the athletes, yes, they do have to go through their physical training, which of course then
Hmm.
you have a lot of all these creators, right? These content creators helping you to keep fit during this period of COVID. But at the same time, in order to train their mind, what they can do is to find a game, log onto a game, find their own teammates, and compete against other teams, and that's where they can keep their minds active.
I heard of this Zwift. In fact, some of them are saying that even amateurs could now have this chance to beat the pros in the game because there are certain things that they can do. They know the cheat codes better than the others, and that's as a result, level the playing ground for even in the field of cycling itself. So I believe this is all very amazing things that can be done. Perhaps how about maybe even something more challenging? I mean, let's take the sport of even maybe swimming or water polo. How do you think esports could help some of our national team train in this aspect down here?
I think okay. So for the physical aspect, definitely you need to do your whether it's your push-ups, your runs and everything. But I think from the throwing aspects, so for example, like biomechanics. This is
Mm,
where esports, technology, digitalization, I think all these can come into play, right? Tracking the way you throw the ball. I think both of us are water
mm,
polo players, so we
mm,
understand a little bit more, right? When I talk about throwing the ball, we know exactly where the power needs to start from the waist to the shoulders to the elbows, and that's where in the future I feel that esports could definitely play a part in terms of
mm.
trying to make sure that you are getting the right movement, the right energy input from different parts of the body. And this is through your home cameras, software that's being developed. And all these will definitely help you in your physical game once you get out there.
Wow, that's very, very true. Now, when we look into careers, because I did read up before that you were also quite involved in helping athletes move towards transition and career transition. Do you think that the possibility of athletes moving on towards esports to extend their career be something that they could look into, or perhaps in your understanding, because even esports itself has what we call the peaks also. What is the best way for this to happen?
I think for sports people to go into esports, really it's up to them. I think it depends on their interest level and to see what they want to do in the future. But speaking from the esports athlete perspective, I think you go
Mm,
from being a youth esports athlete to an elite to a pro, and then after you pass your peak, actually there comes a lot of opportunities in terms of being an entertainer, in terms of being an influencer, right? So even
mm,
though you may have retired from competitive gaming, going to all the top competitions around the world, but from the comfort of your home, you still can earn a decent living from just streaming out you playing your game, because people recognize your skills in the game. And that's where people want to follow you, and what they will do is that they will try to see what the strategies that you take in the game, and from there try to improve their own game. And so there have been a lot of instances where elite esports athletes have retired and gone into a successful career streaming.
mm.
So and they actually
Even
make
as commentators?
equal, yeah, equal or more money. Right. So like what you mentioned just now, in esports it's called shoutcasters. Right. So
Shoutcasters, yes.
yes, that's right. So they can go into shoutcasting, they can go into streaming, graphic design, game development. Because okay, so for example, like us in we used to be sportsmen, right? There are some skills that we got from sport that is transferable to our workplace. Similar for esports athletes, right? So they understand okay what it takes to make a to develop a successful game, something that everyone wants to play. So they use the experience of being an esports athlete and to apply it in their careers, and so that in the future you can always make better games, have better shoutcasters. I always like athletes. A lot of football commentators were footballers in the past, and
Mm,
because they know these little snippets, some things that us non-football players would not know, so they would know these all little tips, and that's where they would provide very insightful comments, insightful advice during on the
uh,
stream itself, on the feed itself. So that's where they can carve out a career for themselves even after they retire from competitive esports.
wow, that's actually quite amazing because when we look into how each career, either an esports athlete or an athlete, could project themselves, I think the important thing is mental resilience on how and what they should be doing in the future. I mean, in the sense of even yourself, when you have uh, left from one company to another, you still kept this idea of how you can maintain links to the sports industry and then connect, I think, two different, seemingly different sports together and creating an alternate business and career for yourself. I think that's already a very good example of how flexible athletes could be in the later years as well. Yeah. All right. So
Definitely. Yeah.
as we move along, next thing is this thing called the financial game rules for athletes. This is where I like to share a little bit more with regard to this because as per athletes who have done well, sometimes there's a pot of gold waiting for them as part of a reward. And occasionally, it could be in the hundreds of thousands. I mean, it's not like water polo where we divide the cash money by 15 players, correct? But in case of some of these solo players, or even perhaps esports whereby the team is huge and the prize money is also huge, some fear will be on how they can make use of this money to keep it properly. So I believe this was where we were discussing on how uh, athletes could understand financial rules so that they can make this better for themselves. So I'd like to introduce just three concepts down here, which is Mr. Market, Mr. Time, and Mr. Money. So if we understand, okay, both athletes, esports, and normal athletes, that there are such things known as the market, economy out there, and whether or not it's a good or bad, we just have to remember one thing, and that is always has a better immunity than us. Which means to say, in the times of COVID period like this, there could be a chance whereby, stock prices are low, everything drops. But because it will peak, it will come back to normal again, this is where they just don't have to worry about the fact that, this will impact their gameplay. So like where you mentioned, the esports athletes will continue to train, to play, and the Pacific Championship series just ended as well. Just continue your normal gameplay and let it be. So let the market pass. So if that's the case, what do we look for next is Mr. Time. Now, time means looking at a frame of maybe 20 years, 25 years. When I say this time, right, it doesn't mean the age of the athlete, but the age in which their money is placed into so that the money can grow regardless of whether the market is up or down. And this is where I use the term time heals all wounds. This is not the first time something big has hit us. Yes, perhaps it is the biggest that has hit the entire world in years. But we have in many periods of time have occasions where a crisis hits us. And what this also means is that because time heals all wounds, we will have our market creeping back up again to normalcy or better than better, what we call highest high. And as the athlete realizes this, he or she must therefore remember that all he needs to do is just to put the cash somewhere and let the money work hard while they themselves work hard as well. Yeah. And last but not least, Mr. Money down here. So this pot of gold, what do they do with it? Do they invest everything? Do they spend everything on the beloved expenses or a new set of a chair, equipment and all that? I think it is good if they want to. And we always have what we consider a budget rule, which is 40, 30, 20, 10. So if they would decide, hey, if I will have loans to pay, I'm sure most athletes would anyway, 40% to the biggest thing out there. Home loan, study loan, whichever loan. The next 30% goes towards expenses, maybe something that they like, they can spend towards there. And the other 20, 10% and 10%, which is the remaining 30% in total of 100, they could go into savings, investments, endowments, and perhaps also good insurance so that they can cover everything. So this term on dollar cost averaging comes to mind for investments because it is used whereby if you put in something small over a period of time, this is where whether the price is high, you buy little. When the price is low, you buy a lot. And this strategy allows any athlete to invest in the volatility of the market to ride it out altogether. So that in the 20 years time frame, whether or not they have been trading for 10 years or trading for 15 years, they don't have to worry. All they need to know and remember is that they are focusing on their jobs, which is to make the country or their team proud, right? So in this game rules, which is to remember Mr. Market, Mr. Time, Mr. Money, I hope that this is something that we can share with all the athletes out down there that they don't have to worry that they are training hard. Because at this point in time, if they understand that they can let their money work hard as well, then this is where both as a two-pronged attack, in which both money and themselves are doing very, very well. So this is something I'd like to just share with all the athletes out down there, both esports and normal traditional athletes that as long as there are game rules, you follow the game rules in your own game, there are also game rules in our traditional sports also. Now, perhaps to end things off, we have about 5 minutes left, right, Ren Kai? Would you like to share with us one of the biggest or greatest takeaway that you have in this entire period so far? And what is your what do you look out for the esports industry, especially for the next quarter?
So I guess with this whole COVID situation, I think one thing we all learn is how to be adaptive, how to be dynamic, right? Businesses that we thought were bread and butter. So for example, you have all your swimming coaches who, every week they're always in the pool, but I think they were one of the hardest hit
Yes, that's right.
professions, right? Because once the pools close, once the sports centers close, none of them could do anything. But then
Yeah.
slowly, all of us started, or all of them started to come up with content, to put it online to get people to remain active during this COVID period. So they were able to adapt to the situation. Yes, everyone was impacted. They don't get as much money as they used to on a
Mm-hmm.
normal month. But at the same time, I think there is a lot of there is survival instincts kick in. Right from there, it's to think about what are the possible roles that everyone can do during this period. And I think it's just admitting that there will be norm, right? And what is this new norm? I don't think anyone actually knows yet, right? When people will start traveling again, when all businesses can open, even if all businesses can open, what are the restrictions, right? Whether you're in the future, if you go to cinemas, there must be some form of distancing from the next person that you're sitting with. All these
Mm.
are all still very unknown. So it's how to be adaptive and how to plan ahead for the future. So I think
Mm.
for us, we are quite blessed. I mean, of course, none of us expected this whole situation. But one
Yeah.
year ago, when we decided to go into esports, because we saw the need to enter into this industry, and that's why we entered into it. And we are quite blessed that with this situation, esports has been one of the lesser impacted industries as compared to a lot of other industries. And I guess that's where we really realize that we need to be adaptable. We need to be
Mm.
dynamic.
Adaptable. Yes. So to be adaptable and to be dynamic, there are some characteristics that I think whether or not you're an esports athlete or you're a traditional sports athlete are characteristics that we all must have. And I think I'm very proud to know and understand that this industry of yours is also doing very well. And next week, right? You were mentioning next week you'll be running this gameplay. Is this something that the others could see, or is this a paid tournament, or what have you?
It's a community tournament, so anyone can take part of it. Again, it's targeted towards the youth.
Mm.
Of course, we need to
Any
engage
chance
our
for
youth.
viewerships to take place? Are we able to
Yes,
tune
yes.
in to take a look?
On the weekends, we're gonna have live streaming from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. I think the details are still being sorted out, so I can't actually tell you
Mm,
exactly what game yet. But once it
no
is
problem.
confirmed, I mean it's all on my Facebook page, all
All
on the
right.
yeah. So from there we can really get together and just watch or even participate in it.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Thank you very much, Ren Kai, and it's a pleasure to invite you to join us in today's session. Though it may be a very very quick 40-minute session, I'm so proud that I'm glad that you were able to tell us some of these things, and what to look out for in the next upcoming months itself in the esports industry as well. So once again, thanks very much, Ren Kai. I'll catch up with you again, and all the best for your future endeavors. All
So
right.
thank you,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Cheers.
Awesome.